Hello and welcome, Exiles, to a character that has the power level of a minion build without actually the bad AI of a minion build. This is Holy Relic Ascendant, and instead of playing like a minion character, it plays like a much more fun playstyle cast on crit. You go around spinning to winning, and whenever you connect a hit, every 300 milliseconds, your Holy Relics behind you will emit a golden nova. This character does pure physical damage, and it hits pretty hard. We combine the beauty of Ascendant's Pathfinder and Necromancer nodes for good movement speed, Tri-Elemental Flasks for good resistances along with less damage taken of those elements, and the power of block from the Offering node while still getting the nice AoE to produce bigger and bigger circles from our Holy Relics. This character has all you could want in terms of smooth defensive layers while having some very solid damage without too much gearing on a Leaguestart. The character has a progression line that I'm pretty happy with. Ultimately, its weakest points are in the early game because Holy Relic simply is just not very good at leveling, so we have to start out with my all-time favorite leveling strategy, which is Righteous Fire, thanks to the new masteries. All in all, I have a plan that will get you from League start to League finish all the way through your Voidstones, and I'm going to lay it out for you bit by bit and try to break down how to put together this character, so that way if you do decide to play this character, you have all the tools you need to succeed with Holy Relic Ascendant. Before we go in game, I'm going to go over the guide POB. To start things off with, I have a leveling tree all the way from 10 up to 66, which this is the large amount of the leveling where you're doing Righteous Fire, and then you'll see I have from 66 to 66 for Holy Relic swap. Now, during the campaign, every single act, you will get at least 2 regret passive points from a quest reward. Things like the Fetid Pool in Act 1 or the Golden Hand quest in Act 2. Point is, you should get about 20 respec points, and that's about how many you need to do the swap from the setup where I have Righteous Fire going versus the setup where I'm strictly into Holy Relic at this point, swapping out of all the passives that are RF related and swapping in all the passives that are Holy Relic specific. I suggest switching here because you will have a few key items. One is the Joffrey's Crest helmet. This doubles your damage for the Holy Relic, and I think it's kind of mandatory for Holy Relic to feel decent. Number 2 is Holy Relic, in my opinion, is a skill that doesn't really start to deal good damage until later in the game. For whatever reason, it seems like a skill that just deals bad damage early on, but then each level, that skill just gets exponentially better. It ramps a lot harder, or at least it feels like it does to me from my experience. So starting it a little bit later after Merciless Lab is, in my opinion, the play. Because in the plan for the leveling POB, we are initially going to bum rush Pathfinder with like Ruby Flask for less damage taken, along with Life Flasks. Righteous Fire should be kind of a breeze while leveling, thanks to some new masteries that I will go over when I go over the leveling specifically. Point is, though, the tree from 10 to 66 is all about leveling with Righteous Fire, because I think Righteous Fire is just a smoother leveling experience, and then swapping at 66 after Merciless Lab to then go into Holy Relic once you have Joffrey's Crest, a key item helmet, which should be about 1 to 5C tops on Leaguestar because the item's really common and I don't see it being very expensive. And then on from that point onward, your Holy Relic. And of course, there are more trees where we go all the way up to 76 to 95, being this the tree we have when we just don't really have good gear. And then eventually there is a swap where we either go for something like an offensive time zone, or not time zone, timeless jewel, where you go for a setup like this where you combine Impossible Escape along with one of these keystones in this region in order to get percent minion damage. We got 2% minion damage, some chaos res, and some life. Ultimately, you probably can get up to 300% minion damage depending on where you set this up. There are some good places to do it. That's up to you to try to look around and find them. I think one of the best places to do it is in the Ascendant zone, but work with what you got. That's if you want to go offenses versus if you want to go defenses. I have a setup where I have the character getting close to cap spell suppress. We get 74 spell suppress, and that's without suppress on any of our gear pieces. And if you look through our items in the POB, the gear isn't good. You probably could get spell suppress with this sort of tree spec, along with the fact we are also doing Divine Flesh with my new favorite mastery that makes armor apply to chaos damage. Basically what this means is half the damage that you're not taking is elemental damage goes over to chaos. You have 5 extra max res, and then on top of that you get another 10% of your 40k armor, aka 4k armor, is applying to those hits. So if you ever get basically mediocre elemental hits, half of that damage is going to be basically erased and not really hit you very hard. So this is more of the defensive setup versus an offensive setup. So you got two options as you're going into the late game. This is like early late game, like right after Voidstones, roughly the 5 to 10 divine budget range. You have it in power level 3. You just bought your first couple awakened gems like awakened minion and awakened brutality. I don't expect those to be expensive, but if they end up being super expensive, you have to factor that into the budget, right? And then ultimately, oops, accidentally went to this too early. That should give you a good idea of what to go for. I also have the initial gear I would expect at that point, aka a staff with Essence of Fear, +1 socket and +2 support, ultimately not too expensive to craft. And then I went ahead and made roughly what I would want you to try to go for, which is a Awakener Orb craft for your chest piece, or effect, offering effect, and then using the suffix can be changed, Reforged Caster to guarantee +1 curse, and then crafting on something like the Gravicious mod for Fizz Taken as in combination with the new life mastery that allows you to get 15% life per your body armor not having life on it. Now this specifically doesn't work in PUB right now, so it's not actually giving us, wait, it is giving us life? I could have sworn it wasn't working for calculating my life earlier. Well, it must have been fixed at some point. I guess it updated in PUB and I didn't even realize it. Whatever, it wasn't working before, but it works now. Okay, I'll take it, I guess. I will take it. I did not, no wait, it's not working for this. I am so confused. Okay, it doesn't work for whatever reason in my defensive setup. It doesn't proc, and it should be the exact same item. So, okay, I don't know what's going on with that. Don't worry about it. Point is, these are two different setups you can go for in sort of that early late game. And then as we go into the notes section of the POB, let's get into more of the nitty gritty of what's going on here. The early game is all about this RF leveling setup that I would recommend going for, because personally I think we're leveling as a Scion. Initially, our passive tree sucks, so our early game is going to be hard to begin with, and it's basically a matter of we have to get through Act 1, and then when we get to Righteous Fire, we start to become Righteous Fire, we start to become viable, basically, with this regen node, and then we can carry that through the rest of the game, because RF leveling is quite good for the axe, and I have a tree sub to do so, and I'll explain how that works. But note section goes over basically this early swap setup, and then afterwards, we get into the talk of if you want to snipe some early upgrades for RF. I have a little bit of better, I have some trades set up in Better TV. If you download Better TV extension, you can copy and paste this link and import them, but it's pretty much just looking for some one-handed RF gear, nothing expensive there really. When to swap to Holy Relic, Aftermark Lab, Flask setup, what to go for, how to craft them. You want to prioritize getting these done early. It makes a big difference for the character. It fixes your resistances. It fixes the feels good of playing the character. Would highly recommend trying to get these set up early. Of course, you're going to want the Flask nodes around the outside of Ranger when you do it. So it might be something more around like level 80ish when you finally get around to getting these optimized. On top of that, I go over try offer cycling. Pretty much how this works is with the alt quality, whenever you're using casts while channeling Desecrate into an offering, and you have multiple offerings, it will only trigger the first offering over and over and over again. Once you get the alt quality, which will sometimes spawn an additional curse, you will begin getting 2 offerings all the time. Now, what's important here is when you go mapping, there's a bunch of extra monster corpses, and it will always get you all 3 offerings. So the way I prioritize this is I have offering at the very last of the links. So while mapping, I have flesh offering for the movement speed, but when I get to a boss fight, I don't need that movement speed. I'm just on top of the boss fight, and I'm on top of the boss, and I'm not doing anything besides just spinning to win on him. And we don't need that movement speed. And ideally, Flesh Offering also messes with your attack rate, which affects your CDR breakpoint. So you want to have your CDR breakpoint optimized on a boss fight and not changing conditionally randomly if your Flesh Offering starts to get triggered. Speaking of the CDR trigger rate, it sounds like a big, intimidating thing, but it's pretty simple. All you have to know is these 3 numbers here. If you have cooldown recovery rate, aka you have the alt quality Holy Relic, the first breakpoint here is basically you need to try to aim for an attack rate that's 3.78 or 7.57. And ideally you want to be slightly under this attack rate. If you're attacking faster, you are bricking your breakpoint. AKA if the 300 milliseconds says If it's the attack rate is 300 milliseconds and I attack twice in 300 milliseconds, like I attack once and then I attack a second time right before 300 milliseconds is up, so it triggers the first time. The second time, if I was a little bit slower, it would trigger. But since I'm faster, I hit before the trigger rate or before the CDR is up, and then the next time I hit is a much later time frame, which then means we're getting a very delayed trigger, which is bricking the damage essentially. So this is a very important thing, but all it really boils down to is check your cyclone attacks per second and see, okay, am I a little bit slow or am I a little bit fast? You could craft attack speed on your staff, or you could go and you could try to spec for spiritual command. Both those things could be ways of raising your attack speed, or other ways of lowering your attack speed would be, hey, if you have attack speed on your gear, take it off your gear. Stuff like that you want to try to optimize specifically for these attack rates, and all these should be fairly easy to get in range with. It's just a matter of kind of playing with a few different vectors to slow yourself down or speed yourself up to try to get closer to the later breakpoint or the earlier breakpoint. Ideally, this is what you want to work on and make sure you're getting this thing adjusted. All you really have to keep in mind is whenever you get an upgrade, aka you first go to Divergent, Holy Relic, well then you're going to be at the 14% CDR. Next upgrade is if you can get a high level enhance and you can hit 52% CDR breakpoint, well then you have to adjust your attack speed again. And then later on, if you get an Ashes, then you can take enhance and you can still hit 52% CDR, but it requires a 22% Holy Relic, which is going to be a little bit hard to hit because that's going to be a double corrupt scenario where you have to get pretty lucky. All right, that covers the trigger rate. After that, Spectres. I haven't really optimized this perfectly, but I know for sure you want a Demon Harpy. This can be found in Beyond Monster Zones. It's the guy with like some tentacly flowing hair thing, kind of a bigger guy. And it will give you a big, basically fizz taken as aura applied or debuff applied to enemies, which is very, very good for damage. I don't have this in the showcase here. I was too lazy to go find it. But if you want to find it yourself, that's where you have to look is Beyond Maps or in Global 666. A lot of guys share their Spectres there, and you probably can find one there. Second priority, I think maybe is Arena Master. I'm not sure if this is actually the best thing, but this is one of the things I was thinking would be decent, but I'm not 100% sure. This is one of those things where I would more be likely to ask a minion expert because they would know Spectres better than I do. These are just some I've heard that are decent. Demon Harpy for sure sounds like a play. Arena Master I think maybe could be good. Outside of that, the early game options, like you just are swapping to Holy Relic and you want to set up a couple Spectres, Host Chieftain and Carnage Chieftain just for power and frenzy charges early on are pretty decent to put into your character. After that, I have a little section on Animate Guardian, but all this is really saying is I don't think Animate Guardian is worth it. I think he's too likely to die, and it's way too annoying to put him back together, and our character does plenty of damage without him. If you want to optimize for power, you will also have to deal with the fact he might die, and you might have to pay the cost of him dying. That is up to you. I leave it up to you if you want to try to make an Animate Guardian. I wouldn't recommend it because it just seems like an annoying thing to deal with, and our character doesn't need that extra power. After which, I have a whole section on gear progression. This is basically just, as you get more money, these are the first things you're buying. Initially, to get Holy Relic set up, you need Joffrey's Crest, and you need Praxis until you get the minus mana cost to help alleviate your mana problems. After that, you have a 4-link is what you want in terms of like your Holy Relic setup. Probably this should be at the same step of Joffrey's Crest, but you get the point I'm making. After which, if you have just these items, life and capped res, well, you're good to go until you have enough money to buy a 6-link staff. A 6-link staff should not be expensive. I perceive it would be somewhere in the range of 5 to 20 C on Leaguestart. Should be an easy pickup, and then you just need a deafening Essence of Fear, ideally, to just throw one of those on there for high % minion damage, and you're ready to rock and roll. After which, you want to start looking for a 5-link chest to get multiple offerings, along with Leash of Oblation to enable multiple offerings to be affecting you. And then as you go, you see there's better and better gear recommendations I make to continue to upgrade your character. For example, our character right now is right around here, where we've made a chest piece with Aura Effect and Offering Effect. Ultimately, this isn't the end of progression. There is a better version of the character that goes for Awakened, Elevated Offering Effect and Elevated Aura Effect. You get the idea. There's ways to continue in upgrading this character. And down here, a little bit at the end, I have options for if you really want to Giga Juice the character. Ashes has massively insane value on this character, along things like if you want to go for Squire, you can make I would imagine some really, really dangerous Holy Relics. That's what I think would be the end game of this character. For me on League Starts, I don't usually want to go that far with my budget, but if you want to take it just if it, as a character where you just keep on upgrading it the rest of the way through, I'm going to try to fill out this list a little bit more before I post this video. All right, now that we've gone through and we've showcased the idea of the gear progression on the character, I want to first address the early game. So the early game, don't look at my blood instead. Don't look at my blood instead. This is something I was going to talk about, but it's not there anymore. Reddit was mad. We were getting nerfed on our League Start, so Reddit decided to complain about our power we'd have on League Start. So it would be, you know, it's a whole thing. Anyways, on your League Start, this portion first here, I believe Magma Ore plus Flame Wall is probably our best bet. The point is, Act 1 is just going to be a slog. Act 1 is a slog. We don't get a good starting tree. But once we get through Act 1, we are going to get to the Mastery right here. And the Mastery right here gives us 1 regen per fire res over 0. Basically, the number in parentheses is what you're talking about here. Specifically, for my character to simulate or to showcase this, I have a character where all I did was basically just have some really basic gear, and then while you're leveling through the campaign, while you're leveling through Act 1, you sell a bunch of the gear you get for transmute shards, and you stack up transmute shards, and there's a recipe we get right away, which is fire res, which you can craft for 1 transmute shard. And I went around and I crafted fire res on all my gear pieces with 1 transmute shard. Now, this spring leaf is just to, I'm only wearing this just to simulate having some level of regen, because right now we don't have the mastery actually in-game to test, but I need to showcase what Righteous Fire looks like in Act 2. So that's why I'm wearing that. But point is, we have 250 fire res. In Act 2, 250 regen per second is insane. For perspective, our HP pool is 430. That represents over 50% of our life being generated per second. That's crazy over sustain. Mathematically, this amount of life pool roughly equates with 75 fire res, taking about 80 to 100 fire damage per second, and we are way more than double sustaining that. So the point I'm trying to make is this 1 mastery alone will carry you into the early / late campaign if you start stacking a little bit more nodes on top of it. So we'd grab the fire mastery here, we then would go up here, we get regen, we get damage, we get more fire res, we get dot multi, maybe we'd go over here to hardy, get another 50 flat regen. My point is, as we're leveling throughout the campaign, Righteous Fire should be fairly easy for us to sustain and us to enjoy for leveling. And I'm going to give you a showcase of what that looks like at the very worst of our character in terms of Righteous Fire. Right out the gate, when we've just kind of just been grabbing travel nodes, so to speak, and nothing really, like, our only damage nodes are 2 damage nodes here. This is the weakest our character is going to be realistically. This is what you could expect in terms of this character. Now, I'm going to degen to Half-Life. I am simulating Righteous Fire with Spring Leaf right now, which only gives about 50 regen. Obviously, we're going to have much more regen than this, but it then gives 100 regen when you hit low life. So you'll see what happens here is, basically what's happening is, I hit the low life, I trigger the regen from Spring Leaf, and it just keeps balancing at low life. When you actually have the mastery, you won't even have Spring Leaf, and you will be sustaining, and you'll be sustaining more than this, and you'll be sustaining at full life. But you can see, initially, as we're just kind of running around here, we're going to be able to still kill most monsters. Our DPS isn't very insane early on, because early on, we don't have any damage nodes, right? We have basically no damage nodes on our tree. But as you start to spec the tree out more for the layout I have recommended, that becomes much and much higher. Now you'll see here, this is it's a what you call it? A rare monster with, I don't know, double who knows what. We're basically face tanking everything, and we have less regen than we would otherwise, and we can still kill it. And it's just a matter of, this is our absolute weakest this character is going to be in terms of damage, especially when you consider the fact, in a trade league, we could snipe items with dot multi, we could snipe some +1 fires, we could snipe a pyre, stuff like that you can use for leveling, enjoy it while leveling, and then resell it to fund your future Holy Relic upgrades. Hopefully that gives you an idea of what to expect initially for leveling. I really love Righteous Fire leveling. If you're a little bit nervous, you're just going to have to trust me on this one. I think you'll like it a lot. That's my personal opinion on leveling with Righteous Fire. Now let's move on to basically what will look like when we actually go for the swap to Holy Relic. I have basically a few different character versions set up so you can kind of get a picture of what this build looks like throughout your various basically places of progression, I would say. I think that gives you a decent idea. So this is the version of the character where we have a basically just a 4-link staff, and this is a Wailing Essence of Fear. This is something you could probably just find while you're leveling up, mapping just some random rink-dink Essence of Fear, chuck it on there. It's a 4-link, and we just go with it. We just say, you know what, that's good enough, let's play the game. And then on top of that, we have a Praxis and Joffrey's Crest. Initially, this Praxis is to help sustain our mana cost, because initially we don't have Elrion Ringcraft, and this is probably a cheap ring. You could probably even use this while leveling. Like, you could probably snipe it off trade, and maybe if you have mana problems, this will fix your mana problems while you're leveling, sort of thing. But basically, all this is here for is the minus cost initially to fix our mana. Once you get a crafted flask with reduced mana cost, and you get the Elrion craft, which is a bench craft where you get minus to non-channeling skills, you won't have mana problems going forward. But this is a crutch to get you into the swap before you have access to those other things. Also, I will state, on my planner, I have the plan to get the mastery that says 30% of your skill cost is spent as life. That will actually help your mana problems quite a bit, and it might, for the most part, solve the need for Praxis. I'm not 100% sure. That's something you're going to have to test out and see what it's like. But anyways, we'll give a quick demonstration of what this character looks like. Basically, just getting to Blood Aqueducts. Now, I wouldn't recommend swapping into this character until basically Merc Lab. I think with the Righteous Fire leveling, it works well enough. I think take it all the way to Merc Lab, get to level 66 basically, and then do the swap. But say you did the swap a little bit early, just when you could equip Joffrey's Crest and a Praxis and a 4-link staff. This is roughly what it would look like with some level of just kind of mediocre gear. You're just kind of going with what you can, and it's just, you're at the playstyle where you're just kind of spinning and winning, and you're having a little bit of fun. I like it this way, and I think going forward, the character initially at this point is still much weaker than it's going to be. It hasn't hit the full power spike or the early power spike that Holy Relic really gets compared to other builds, and that power spike is the easy and cheap 6-link staff. Now, this isn't saving you like some crazy astronomical amount of money compared to other builds, but what it's doing is a 6-link staff versus a 6-link body armor. Everybody on the market is competing for a 6-link body armor. Not everybody on the market is competing for a 6-link staff. If you check the prices early league, 6-link staves are much cheaper, so it'll be an easy acquisition much earlier, and you'll probably have it either before you get to white maps, like if you just get it like a few chaos throughout the campaign, or very early on in white maps you will have that 6-link, and you'll get that big spike in damage. And then as you level up the character, when your Holy Relic gets leveled, you will get big damage upgrades from those levels as well, which will feel quite good in my opinion. So hopefully that gives you kind of a decent picture of, early on we do Righteous Fire, we level with Righteous Fire, and then we swap to Holy Relic. So that hopefully gives, like, I don't know, some decent picture of what you could expect in terms of gameplay. Now initially my character, I'm using Spirit Offering because you just have a 4-link. You want to eventually get the Leash of Oblation and do multiple offerings and whatnot. I think Spirit Offering is nice for damage early on, but if you want to go for extra tank, you go for the Bone Offering first, and if you want the extra speed or the extra movement speed, you go for Flesh Offering first. That's something you're gonna have to play on your own intuition, on your own sort of prerogative on what you want to go for first. In terms of early on, you only get one of the offerings until you get a 5-link, you get 2, and then when you get a 6-link, you get 3 offerings in your chest piece. But that's an upgrade you'll make later on in maps, maybe around yellow maps, when you get the chaos to be able to afford a rare chest piece with a 6-link. Hopefully that makes some level of sense. Now let's go into what it looks like in more end game scenario when you're about to take on the Voidstones, or you've already taken on the Voidstones. I have a level 95, well, technically it's level 98, but I don't have the character spec'd for level 98. I have 4 passes, but I haven't spec'd, so technically this is like a 94 character. I also wanted to showcase, previously in this build, I was using the Determination Mastery. The difference in the Determination Mastery was the difference in me having 81 mana unreserved, and the difference in me having 14 mana unreserved. The funny thing about this character is, I took off the Determination Mastery, and it turns out I didn't need the Determination Mastery. It just plays with the 14 mana because we have such a large reduction in mana cost. Most of my skills cost less than 10 mana, and we definitely over-sustain it. So you'll see while we're playing the game, we still don't have mana problems. And the cool thing is, in return, we got +1 max res if we simply get armor on all of our gear pieces, which we should be able to get. I just have some potato gloves and boots. You'd want the +1 max max mastery and go for armor pieces here, or armor evasion if you want to try to put in suppress into the character. Hopefully that makes some sense. Now, let's give you a little bit of a showcase of what this looks like. I'll risk it on an un-ID'd Minotaur. Let's hope this isn't Fizz Reflect, or I will greatly regret this because my dudes are going to PK themselves. But is it really fun to not at least try an un-ID'd map for the fun of it and see what happens? So while mapping, okay, it looks like they're not killing themselves, so we're fine there. While mapping, it's basically just a spin to win. I think ideally, I haven't thought about it enough to come up with a solution I like per se. I think it might be an unset ring angle. But right now, if we just added in Leap Slam, I think that would really complete the movement set for this character, because we do have a decent amount of attack speed in this character when considering Flesh Offering. And then not only would we do Frost Blinking, we would also be able to do Leap Slam in between packs as well to increase our basically clear speed a lot more than it is right now. And this is one of those characters where it's not going to be the greatest clear speed. It's not going to be the greatest single target, but it is really tanky. It does move pretty fast. It comes with the ability to, like, not really think about what's going on. I'm just spinning to win. That's all I'm really doing. Occasionally, I might die to Corrupted Blood if I don't have a Corrupted Blood immunity duel, if you're early on your gearing. Stuff like that could happen, but it just has the silky smooth defensive layers. High block, high sustain, taunt from your specters and your golem, a decent amount of regen, the high mitigation from flasks, and you just spin to win. And you have the cool golden novas, and it just feels pretty good. All in all, I'm quite happy with how this character feels. I know some people will say there's not enough single target on that, I don't think it's good enough, whatever, yada yada yada. For me, I'm pretty content with this, and I think it would be a smooth League starter from the early game to the end game. Now, early game, Act 1 is pain. It's always pure pain, especially considering it's a Scion Leaguestart. But outside of that, everything else, now you'll see I'm going to get stunned by this. Or usually I get stunned by this. Okay, I didn't get stunned by it, but this is something else I wanted to say. Eventually, when you're min-maxing your character, you want to get Awakened Castle Channeling, because that will actually get you stun immune while cycloning. Because that's one of the few annoying things left in this character, and there is a solution for it, which is Awakened Castle Channeling. I just didn't bother with setting that up for this character showcase or whatnot, but it's still it's like, I don't know, 3-4 million DPS or something on this level of gear. I think it's pretty good, and that's what you can see in the POB. The gear in the POB is based on that character right here. I did make a couple custom pieces just to showcase. I didn't want people to think you should go for previously on my character I was wearing an anvil just because it was a crappy amulet that gave me a little bit of block. It kind of worked for the character and it gave me the +1 curse. I don't want people to think that's actually the ideal amulet. This is not the ideal amulet, right? Sorry, I just realized I wasn't even showcasing you, but if you go to the amulet thought, you'll see here I used to have an anvil amulet. I was only using this for the +1 curse, but that was only because when I did the Awakener orb on my chest piece, I hit like good life and Fizz Take and Az or something, and I didn't have the heart to roll over it. But ideally in the new league with the mastery for 15% life, you really just want to go for the +1 curse and Fizz Take and Az. That's just going to be a better chest piece, I would say. So I did swap some chest pieces here just to give you an idea of more what you want to look for. You want to look for an amulet with life and +1 if you can, or look for a chest piece where you're going for that +1 curse. You're not just being like, oh, I hit life, I don't want to roll over it and be lazy about it, sort of thing. Hopefully that makes some level of sense, and hopefully I've explained this character decently. So this should give you an idea of what to do in terms of progression all the way through in upgrading the character. Hopefully I haven't missed too many things. Hopefully if you do choose to play this Leaguestarter, it is a pretty good time for you. I'd say it excels in progression early on with not much gear. It excels in tankiness. It excels in decent clear speed and feels good play. Basically just spin to win. You don't have to think about too much of what you're doing. But the one thing, areas where I'd say it is a little bit lacking, it doesn't have as much damage as some of the other League starters I've seen put out by other people. It's not like a crazy powerhouse single target build. And it is a little bit rough on the initial leveling. Act 1 is rough, And then Righteous Fire feels good, but the damage there is still weak until you get a few more damage nodes over here where it starts to really come together. Hopefully that makes some level of sense and gives you an idea of what a Holy Relic Ascendant could do on a Leaguestart. I don't think I've missed things, but if I think of things I've missed, I will update the POB in the description for things I've missed if I think of them, basically. As always, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, and if you enjoy this character on Leaguestart, well, I hope it's a good one. As always, take care, Exiles, and peace out.